If you lead worship in a small church, you might just have one drummer, one keyboard player, maybe two vocalists, maybe you're one of them. So when you put someone on the schedule and they say no, you might not have anyone else to turn to. So I get it. So in this video, I'm not going to tell you to use volunteers you don't have, but at the same time, I got to be honest. Overusing your team members, it's not a healthy way to lead a ministry. That means that sometimes the service has to change so that the same 2 or 3 people are not always there and having to serve week after week. Today, I want to talk to you about how we tend to overuse our most dependable people. And I also want to share about how I used to live inside of that world as well. And the great news is that there are things that you can do to help with this situation. Hi, my name is George, and I help worship leaders care for people, build healthy teams, and lead ministries that last. And I have always been that dependable person that leaders can depend on, but I've also been the worship leader who overuses my most dependable people. I grew up in a Hispanic Pentecostal church, and we had a ton of services. So we had a service in the morning that is Spanish, a service in English, then we had a Sunday evening service. On Tuesdays, we had our prayer services, and on Thursdays, we had a family evangelical service. So that was a lot of days out of the week. And the worship team played all of those services. We played all of those services. And then we practiced. We had to practice. Sometimes it was on a Monday, maybe it was on a Wednesday. And essentially, that means we were at church almost every single day. And that's wild to think of it right now, but we were there almost all the time. And if you grew up in a Hispanic Pentecostal church, you know our services were not short. They were at least 2 to 3 hours, sometimes 4 if things got crazy that day. And Sunday nights, boy, it's like you told them to never finish, right? We'd start at 7 p.m. and sometimes we got out by 10, maybe 11. It was insane. When we were young, no big deal. No commitments, no spouse, no children. We loved to play music. We loved to rehearse. We were all very close friends. So we loved to do it, and we had the time to. It was very rare for any of us to miss a service. I mean, at all. We had this bad misconception or bad notion that the more we served, the more faithful we were, the more we loved God. That was just something that was ingrained into us since we were young. Serving, though, does not automatically mean you love God more. I couldn't see it then. I thought I was right. We all thought we were right. We did not talk about balance, about capacity, about healthy limits. We only talked about showing up and serving because that's all that mattered. Again, the more you served, the more you loved God. This became even more challenging as time went on. As our friend group started changing or new people started becoming part of the team, we had different personalities, different commitment levels, different energy. And so it was hard to manage it this way because now our friendship didn't hold everything together. And then later on, dating life became difficult, right? Like we didn't have time to go out as much unless they were part of the worship team themselves. It was all about church. And so as you get older and as I got older and we all got older, we started feeling the pressure and the burden of serving so much. Eventually, I got married. And since church took up so much of my time, I felt like I started resenting it a little bit. I became bitter because I felt I never had any time. So what ended up happening is that I was showing up, but my heart wasn't there anymore. I was there because I felt I had to, because if I wasn't there, I was going to be judged for not being there. And I promised and committed that I would show up, and that's what it all became at some point, just a commitment. I had lost my joy for serving. And this is a very important warning sign. A person can be serving all the time and still feel tired and bitter and resentful and serving only because they have to. I needed someone to help me realize that I was not functioning at a capacity that is doable. When you're young, you don't have the commitments and you have the energy, so the whole world is in front of you. But sometimes as leaders, we need help realizing that we can't maintain this capacity in the long run, and it's better to set great expectations and great limitations now. Small churches, I want to talk to you for just a little bit. Small churches usually have two major limitations. One, you have a lack of volunteers. And two, you have a lack of experienced musicians. So when Sunday's coming around and it's rolling around, all you can really think about is who's gonna serve, who's gonna play. And that usually means development is not even in the picture. Development is not even part of the conversation. We're just trying to cover this Sunday. And then once this Sunday comes and goes, we're trying to cover the next Sunday and the Sunday after that. So what ends up happening? You depend on the same 2 to 3 people every single week. So trust me, I get it. The Sunday keeps going. Sunday doesn't stop for anyone. A small team, a full calendar, Sunday after Sunday, that's all that's really needed for a leader to overuse their team. And yes, a thank you is always good, but it does not reduce the workload. Dependable does not mean inexhaustible. A demanding season is not always unhealthy. Sometimes a person gets sick, or maybe a member of your team moves away, or a special event needs extra help. The question though is, does the season have an end? Does the leader have a plan for it? In a temporary season, the team usually knows why the workload is higher. They know how long it's going to last. The leader checks in, maybe reduces the workload in other areas, and then works on the next solution after that. An unhealthy pattern though is very different. There is no end in sight. No one is talking about development. No one is talking about this season versus the next season. No one is reviewing the schedule. The team simply says, this is how we've always done it, and we're going to keep doing it this way. A temporary, demanding season has an end date. An unhealthy pattern just says, this is how we've done it. This is how our ministry operates. Ask yourself this question. If nothing changes, will the same people serve at this pace in the next 6 months? If the answer is yes, you're not managing a temporary season. Before you ask the same person again, check these 4 things: frequency, role load, recovery time, and freedom to say no. First, check frequency. Look at the last 8 weeks. Did the same people serve most of the Sundays? And don't forget other special events like prayer meetings, last-minute fill-ins. Don't just look at the previous Sunday. Look at a long period of time. Second, role load. So this means that maybe the person isn't serving every week, but when they do serve, they're doing lights, they're doing sound, they're getting there early, they're the last one to leave, they're running around and maybe taking care of multiple things. Count the work that is not written beside their name. Third, check recovery time. When was the last time a dependable person had the entire day off? And I don't just mean they didn't play, but they did lyrics or something like that. No, they had the entire day off. They didn't have to show up for rehearsal or show up before. They didn't have to leave late. They had no responsibility. If they help in any way that day, they are not off. They still helped. Fourth, check whether they can say no. When you send out an invitation or you request someone to help, do they feel like they are free to say no? And when they do say no, how do you respond? Do you, as a leader, take it and try to solve the problem yourself? Or do you maybe make them feel guilty and try to explain to them why they need to serve or what's going to happen if they're not there? And on that same note, if one person declining makes your ministry fall apart, it's not the person's problem. That means just the ministry's kind of designed in a way that maybe is a little bit unsustainable and unhealthy. So that's something that just needs to be checked. Here, take note of this as well. This conversation works best when there's a relationship there. Your team needs to know that you want the best for them. So when you start giving them breaks, you're not doing it out of punishment. You're doing it for what is best for them. Start with what you actually noticed. A conversation with your team member can be something like, hey, I looked over the last 8 weeks and I noticed that you actually served a lot. So I just kind of want to check in real quick and see, how are you doing? How are you really doing? Then ask, what feels heavy right now? What needs to change? Where do you need support? Is this schedule still working for you and your family? And then after you ask those questions, listen. Don't try to defend the schedule. Don't try to make them feel guilty by making them understand why their contribution is so important. You already know finding volunteers is really hard. That doesn't change that the person still needs rest. If a young volunteer says, I'm fine, I can keep doing this, you can still help them learn a healthier pace. Tell them that you really appreciate their willingness, but you don't want their current energy level to set the expectation for the rest of their lives. It's just let them know it's just not something that we can sustain or you can sustain forever. And if in one particular date someone declines, find out why they are declining and remind them it's okay to decline. They're not saying no to God. They're not saying no to the ministry. It's okay to say no. So small churches, what do you do when this small church problem is getting real and you find out there is nobody else ready? You have to change how the service operates. First thing I'd recommend, simplify. Maybe 1 instrument, 2 instruments. Trust me, I know it's difficult, but I've had to do it too. There's been services where I had to lead in me by myself, me and the piano, the fast songs, the slow songs, all of it, all in the name of giving my team a break. Secondly, rotate. Give people Sundays on and off. Rotate them in and out. Not everyone has to serve every single Sunday. And again, there's services in the middle of the week, so maybe give them rest through the less important services and you can have them more on Sunday services. Third, tailor the schedule. Talk to each person individually. Maybe someone really prefers 2 Sundays in a row off. Maybe some people just need to serve less in that season in their lives. Maybe a member with a spouse and a family needs a little bit more wiggle room in their serving schedule. And again, younger volunteers may still have the time and energy to serve, but you gotta help them set healthy limits. Fourth, develop somebody else. This is a tough one, even for me, because a developing musician does not sound like an experienced musician. But that's kind of part of development, right? We've all been beginners at some point. If you require the same quality every single week, you might find yourself using the same experienced musicians all the time. So, people are more important than maintaining a full band. A simpler service is more important than an exhausted team. So that means a healthy worship ministry should produce healthier people, not exhausted people. So that means the goal is not to find a few people who can carry the whole thing. The goal is to develop many people who can each carry something. And I know leaders, I get this part. This means that a lot more responsibility is going to have to be placed on your shoulders while people are starting to be developed. It may also mean you have to lower the musical standard for a season or two. Those are big deals and real costs, and trust me, my friend, I get it. But I promise you, in the long run, this approach is going to pay dividends because you will have your time to rest. Before you make the next schedule, identify the person who has served the most over the last 8 weeks. Then, review the 4 areas we talked about earlier: frequency, role load, recovery, and freedom to say no. And then, as my cat joins us, have the conversation with your team members. You're probably going to have to start making changes. You remember what we talked about as well. Simplify, rotate, tailor, and start developing more people. And please, do not wait until your dependable people start getting bitter, resentful, exhausted, lose their joy, maybe damage their family, and worst case, sometimes they just leave. Sometimes being a good leader means helping your team set healthy limits for themselves. If you haven't watched our previous video, that video explains what ordinary rehearsals teach a team about its culture. And we do all of this because we don't just lead music, we lead people.